Hello everyone, it's GigaBeef here, and today we're investigating what effects the recent ammo changes to 545 and the high-end SMG cartridges will have on the current meta in Tarkov. By the way, I stream on both YouTube and Twitch, and I keep my schedule updated on Twitter, so come over when I'm live to ask any questions in real time. There are two main things that got changed recently. Firstly, the penetration buffs to BT and BS in 545, and secondly, the improvements to crafting recipes, times and outputs for the best SMG ammos. Starting with the BT and BS buffs, this came about a week ago, but I keep getting asked about it and I haven't covered it yet. So BT went from 40 pen to 42 pen, and BS went from 51 pen to 52 pen. BT in particular is quite interesting because of the history of this cartridge. Back in the day, it used to have 37 penetration, i.e. on par with M856A1 for 556. But when all the mid-tier 545 bullets got buffed up, it was moved to 40. With this change to 42, it's only 2 pen from M855A1's value of 44, and this is generally considered a pretty staple PvP round. At a surface level, this specific change from 40 to 42 doesn't make all that much difference because of this particular range of values, which is in between the sensitive ranges for Class 4 and Class 5. At 40, it was basically a guaranteed penetrate against Class 4 armors already, so 42 just tweaks this up slightly from 87% to 93%. Against Class 5, the initial chance goes from 9% to 18%, which of course is an improvement, but it's still in the category of unlikely rather than making a material impact. Looking in detail a little bit more, the Class 5 performance is probably more impactful, as the small increase in 3-shot consistency versus Class 4 isn't as important as improving the multi-hit performance against the better armors. Taking the weakest piece, the Corrend, with all thorax shots, the old BT killed in 5 hits most of the time, with shot 6 being less likely but still a large-ish possibility. With the new BT, this moves the unlikely shot 6 kill to shot 4 instead as a lucky kill. Although the shot 5 chance stays roughly the same for both, the increased armor damage effect from having a higher pen shines through here to improve the consistency of the bullet. Against something in the middle of the protection range at Class 5, such as the new Hex Attack armor, the higher armor damage pulls back the time to kill quite a bit. These charts are a little bit confusing to look at because of the distribution, so broadly speaking it takes the average shots to kill from 6.6 to 5.8, so nearly a whole bullet less per engagement. As for BS, again the sensitive ranges for Class 5 armor is around 47 and 57 for Class 6, so going from 51 to 52 doesn't make any huge headline differences. Class 5 first shot performance goes from a 91% chance to 92, so basically nothing done, and Class 6 from 13% to 18%. Against the Slick, this takes the shot 5 chance down slightly and increases the shot 4 chance with it, but it's only by 10%, so the impact here is not all that large. Likewise, against the Zabralo, the chances are skewed slightly further towards a 5 shot from the higher TTKs, but it's nothing crazy. Overall, I feel that the biggest impact here is to BT, and it also makes it more usable over range. You're much more likely to penetrate a Class 4 helmet now, as we only drop below 37 pen at about 140 meters, which is roughly the 50-50 point against Class 4. This could make the very accurate but semi-auto only SAG AKs a little bit better when used with this ammo, but we have to be really careful, as damage mitigation means that it's practically impossible to get a headshot with BT through Class 4 helmets. This is the case even if the bullet makes it through, which is a little strange. Next we have the crafting changes to the SMG ammo types. As we all know, this patch, top tier ammo is often locked to the level 3 workbench, and players have had to really choose hard what to make here given the lengthy production times. More often than not, M995, BP and M61 have taken priority through a combination of the craftable amounts, their in-game performance and their price. I have argued previously that because of the way that SMGs get used in general, i.e. spray and pray, that we needed to be given more per cycle. M61 for example is typically used in semi-auto weapons that don't burn through that much ammo, which is really not the case for something like the 45 Vector. However, this is what has happened here in most of these cases. SS190, which is the top P90 cartridge, has moved from 100 to 180 per craft, so nearly twice as much without changing the recipe. This makes it more like 2,000 rubles per bullet now, still extremely expensive for what it is, but a bit more worthwhile than before, especially if you're stacking it with SB193 to make it go further. This one only took 9 hours by default, so this was kept the same. 45 AP for the UMP or the 45 Vector was previously nearly 15 hours long, which was crazy, and is now an 8 hour and 45 minute base, which is much better. These kind of times realistically allows you to craft something before you go to bed at the end of the night, and then something else in the morning when you get up, and this is especially useful if you're not actually at your PC in the day. The price of this craft was increased a tiny little bit, requiring 150 laser match now rather than 120, but overall this is one of the cheaper crafts at approximately 750 rubles per round, which is getting quite tempting given we have seen the strength of this ammo previously when it was on the traders. With the advent of the SR2M this patch, but the locking of 9x21 BT into the workbench, this made it hard to want to use BT when PS is purchasable from Prapor. Although it does do a lot more damage and has 4 more pen in the class 4 sensitive area, it just didn't really justify tying up the workbench for it. 9x21 BT has seen the cost come down a little, requiring less blue gunpowder, so is now about 1,700 rubles a round or so, and the crafting time has been halved from nearly 15 hours to just under a more reasonable 9 hours instead. I'm still not sure if this is really worth it given it's such a specific weapon compatibility and opportunity cost of not crafting something else that is better, but at least it's something. Now, APSX for the MP7 saw all 3 buffs: lower cost through 1 less green and red powders in the recipe, the production times slashed from 21 hours to 10 hours, and 180 provided per cycle rather than 120. When we ran the numbers on this originally, it was one of the most expensive and difficult crafts at nearly 3,000 rubles per bullet. But after the changes, we're looking at more like 2,400. This is still a lot, but do bear in mind the performance of APSX over the other cartridges that we've talked about already. With 53 pen, it's right up there with the 556's M995 and 545's BS, but fired from the 950 RPM MP7 instead. What's more is, given the strangely easy access to the second best round in this caliber, FMJ, you can effectively stack mags here super efficiently. One to think about. The big downside to APSX is the fact that it only has 35 damage to start with. This means that it can never kill anybody with a headshot ever, because as soon as it leaves the barrel, it loses a tiny bit of damage and it doesn't do enough to kill them. Outside of these, the SPP craft for the VSS had its inputs adjusted slightly to 50 9x21 BT and 4 blue gunpowders, but there's still no point doing this over SP6 if given the choice in my opinion. The top bullet for the Ash 12 PS12B also got a buff to 80 from 60 per cycle, which I guess helps a tiny bit, but it's still kind of expensive and takes a while at 13 hours. One thing to bear in mind about the crafting times is that your crafting skill will give you a bonus to this as you level it. At level 19, which is not all that high, I have a 14.25% bonus to shortening these times, so the APSX craft that takes 10 hours and 11 minutes base only takes me 8 hours and 43 minutes. This means that the times that you see on the wiki are probably much shorter for you personally, depending on how much you enjoy crafting. So in summary, how impactful do we think these changes are going to be? Generally speaking, the BT and BS pen adjustments won't make that much difference practically, as when we're looking at thorax only shots theoretically, and there's only a small difference there even, once you add in all the rest of Tarkov's randomness like limb damage and collateral, the actual in-raid impact should be fairly small. As we move towards the later stages of this wipe, from a dedicated player's perspective might I add, I am noticing a large amount of M995 being used right now. This is due in part to its decent craft quantity of 200, price of about 1,000 rubles per round, and good ballistic performance as far as top end rounds go, plus the implicit buff to full auto weapons from the general horizontal recoil reductions that we saw at the start of the patch, which has made 556 feel pretty good. So given M995 competes for the same level 3 workbench time as these other bullets, I think we'll be hard pressed to see some of them being made instead, especially SS190 and 9x21 BT. But I do think the APSX craft has become much more interesting with the reduced production time and the meta-ness of the MP7 right now. I guess it's time to start making some and give it a try. So next, go and check out my video on which ammo you should be using to beat class 5 armor, which is what most of the high level players are wearing that you'll meet in PvP these days. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, hit all the buttons if you enjoyed the video, and as always, have fun in your raids.